pandemonium. Use my fangs to murder ya. Yo soy la diosa, los demonios no me controlan. Soy culebra.
Thank you for tuning in for another episode of Nightmare on Sedgwick Avenue podcast. This is season 4, episode 8, I believe, actually 9 now, episode 9. So today I have a really cool guest. She goes by Jennifer Cooksey. She is an artist, a curator, a writer, a little bit of everything. She's just an overall creative. She's here located in San Diego. And she is also known for creating the creator of Creep in the Corner, which is a book series and also a creature she created. So we'll get to talk to that about that in a little bit. But without further ado, let me bring her on the screen here. Hey, Jennifer.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you for again taking the time. Been trying to have you on. I know I've had Horrorgasm before. I had one of the founders, and you yourself are a founder of it as well. So we'll get into that in a little bit. But thank you again for joining me today. And then obviously I introduced you a little bit, but if you don't mind kind of like talking a little bit about how you got into, like the creative community, how you started, how did you, start art and all that stuff?
Well, I started out as a visual artist. And I really loved horror. So I kind of really leaned into horror pop art. And eventually I got hooked up with Thumbprint Gallery and La Bodega Gallery and now Malbicho. So we have all this really solid art community here. And I was very much embraced. And so I started doing visual art. And then I realized I had stories in me. I want to tell stories too.
Yeah.
And I could do it with visual art, but I wanted it to be my story. I wanted to start sharing stories that were in my head or things I thought. So that's how I started getting into writing. And I started writing my first novel in 2018 while working full time and doing curating and doing art shows and trying to be as busy as possible. So I just kind of fell into these things. And then with Horrorgasm, I wanted to connect with the horror community here in San Diego. I know we have a really large community and I kind of wanted to celebrate everything. So with my other artist friends, we formed Horrorgasm. And so we do art themed events and all kinds of fun horror stuff locally. And then now we have our own indie comic, and we have writers from all over the place, but we mostly focus on San Diego writers and talent, which there's a lot.
There is. And how did you start actually doing visual art? Where did you pick that from? Is it somebody a family member? Does it run in the family, or how did you fall in love with art in general?
I got really lucky. So my whole family is very artsy. Okay. All of my siblings, we've always been encouraged to draw. I always had crayons in my hands. But what got me started with art was actually my mom. She really loved Dia de los Muertos art. She would always decorate ofrendas very beautifully, and she loved it because it represented her culture. And me wanting to connect, I decided, well, you know what, I should try doing some art. And I just got some clay and bit pieces of wood and was just playing around trying to make something happen. And she was very encouraging. And actually, I think art saved me. I can really say that art saved me at so many points in my life. When my mom passed away, it was a desperation to hold on to that culture because she was my link to it. She taught me our culture. She gave me cultural pride. And I thought, oh no, without her, it's going to be gone.
Yeah.
And so I worked really, really hard to stay connected. And so I started doing a lot of cultural and then folklore themed arts. Okay. And then it just kind of moved into horror and pop art as I kept kind of growing as an artist. But really, I didn't know what I was doing. I just kind of jumped in and gave it a try. But I was 19 at the time. So ignorance of youth.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know anything.
And currently, what you do as your main job, does it have to do with art, or is it completely different? From what you
I'm a full-time writer now. So
nice.
I write a lot for our comics. Sorry, that was my dog. She brought her squeaky in. But I'm a big fan of horror, and I wanted to kind of develop that and play with that. But really, with writing, it's still all horror based. Like
Okay.
I really stuck to the genre.
That's cool.
But this has kind of a cultural perspective to it, and I'm using the culture my mom taught me with her ghost stories, and now I'm sharing those. And then the picture book, Creep in the Corner.
Yeah,
I wanted something to introduce kids to monsters. You got it. Yes. But yeah, I wanted to have like a gateway to horror for children that wasn't traumatic, because before I'll becoming a writer full time, I was a preschool teacher.
Oh wow.
So I mean, I wore long sleeves. Nobody saw the tattoos. I dressed normal. Nobody could tell I was a little different. But yeah, before that, so I saw kids really scared on Halloween. We would try to read fun books to them, and I realized, like, wait a minute, they deserve, like, they need something that kind of safely enters them in, to see that monsters aren't necessarily scary.
Yeah.
So that's how Creep started.
That's pretty cool. And what do you find like is the funnest part about being an artist, and what's like the hardest part for you?
The best part is the community. I love the visual art community, the curating community, and the writing community. I came into both of those completely green. I didn't know what I was doing, and community members embraced me. I was supported, and that's how I was able to grow.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And what do you find the most hardest part about being an artist?
Probably self-doubt. Not believing in myself. We're all our worst critics. We can tell ourselves horrible things and believe them.
Yeah.
And so it's really hard overcoming like this general sense of, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So that's the hardest part, is doubting yourself, doubting your talent, doubting your ability to tell the stories or create the art you want to make. That's really hard to overcome.
Yeah, and I agree. I'm definitely one of those too. Like for you, what helps you like to overcome that obstacle of like self-doubt when you're feeling like that?
I try to remind myself that life is really short, and I don't want to leave this place and feel like I didn't try my best. Like I didn't at least, I mean, if nobody reads the book, but I still made it, right? That's still something that I accomplished and I can hold on to.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think that kind of helps me get over that like self-doubt. I feel it. I process it. I try to look at it in a healthy, constructive way. But yeah, it's one of those things. It's really hard to mentally jump over, and I still deal with it. I have to remind myself constantly, like, it's okay.
Yeah, but that's good that you don't let it deter you, from doing what you want to do. So that's really cool. And we talked about a little bit about like Horrorgasm and how you started that with it's a group of, was it 4 of you guys, or how many of you guys?
Yes, it was 4 of us. So being artists, some of our partners had different creative journeys, and we wanted to let them explore that. Yeah. And so now it is just me and Atiba Royster, and we're kind of driving Horrorgasm like into 2022 and the future.
Okay, cool. And how is that going? Because I know you guys had that like every, I think it's around this month, right? Where you have like that big event. Like, are you guys still doing that, or what's your plans with Horrorgasm?
So Atiba and I have been deep diving into our comic anthology series, and so that's taken up a lot of our time. But it's been a weird transition. We've been looking all year for like a venue for the events, and nothing seemed to kind of work out, like time wise, schedule wise, because the world opened up and everybody wants to do fun stuff. So we have a lot more competition for venue space now. So our plan in 2023 is to get back to doing smaller art events like we used to, where we'd have like art crawls and work with different like local vendors and have like a whole kind of community-based thing, a little smaller in scale, just because we don't know how the art market is going to react with like everything going on in the world with recession. People don't tend to want to really spend on luxuries, and like a convention, like another convention here, it's kind of a lot. So we're just kind of seeing what's happening, but we're still representing, we're still writing, we're still creating, and you'll see more of us. I promise. This year was kind of an adjustment year for us, but we'll be back at it.
Yeah, let me know like how any way I can help too, because I was just like the last couple. It's kind of crazy because all these last 3 interviews I've done, everything's kind of interconnected. with like the community here in San Diego, as far as like the horror community. Like I feel like we said off camera before we got on, is like we have like a thriving community, but it feels like it's scattered everywhere. Like it's not as organized, I guess, as like Orange County, or you know how they have the Witches Brew, or LA, where they have these big, like you said, conventions. It would be cool to have that here in San Diego, but any way I can help, let me know.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we're building back to it. We want to have like the full-blown convention. Like that's the dream, right? Like take over Comic-Con space
that would be
in
cool.
October and just celebrate horror, but also like pump up our community, because really there's so many of us horror creators, content creators that are local to us, but yeah, we're all kind of spaced out. We need something that kind of unifies all of us. And I would love for Horrorgasm to be something like that one day, where we can celebrate everybody and bring everyone together.
Yeah, that would be really cool. Yeah, like for example, like Malvicho does a lot of like the costume giveaways that they do for people that can't, afford that kind of like privilege or luxury, I guess, for some people. So I'm like, that's pretty cool that they do that.
They're amazing. Both of them, the way they run everything, their creativity, like they're so on top of it. Like I feel like they're living the dream right now.
Yeah, seriously, I agree.
they're kicking butt in the horror community. Their art shows are like, every art show, it's like hard to top like the level of the stuff that they're bringing in. So it's a kind of amazing that we have that. Like I feel so spoiled that, oh my gosh, I could just go down to Barrio Logan and enjoy all of that horror in one little spot. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And the fact that they open up their doors to like for me, like I just started doing art, so it's kind of cool. Like I was able to drop off some stuff there for one of the little art shows that they had, but it's kind of cool that they open that for artists all over. So it's pretty cool.
That is, it's really, I love how they're very engaging. They're very good to artists. They treat us all very well.
Yeah.
And congratulations on jumping into art. I would love to have you. I'll let you know when we have future shows, because we'd love to have you.
Yeah,
like that's great. I think exploring art visually and kind of getting into it, I look back on those days as some of the best days of my life. Like just learning in the process and making art. Like it's a wonderful time.
Yes,
I'm glad you're in it. It's a good space.
Thank you. Yeah, I just got into, because I always would like kind of doodle, but I was just like, I never took it like too serious, I guess you can say. And then I just started doing it. Like for me, like one thing I battle with is anxiety. Like I'm always just like thinking ahead, making up scenarios. And for me, like one thing that art, like actual, painting and all that stuff has helped me to like be in that moment, because you're so into doing, the painting. So I was like, it's helped calm down my anxiety. So.
I completely agree. I know, because I can't meditate. Like I'm anxious all the time.
Yeah.
I probably have undiagnosed ADD, because I'm just like, I'm a little ball of energy and then I crash.
Yeah.
But I feel that anxiety too. I definitely understand what that's like, working through that.
Yeah.
And it's almost like when you're creating the art, you get into a really zen space.
Yes.
That's like my version of meditating, I feel like, is when I'm doing art or I'm writing, because like hours will fall off the clock and I'll feel like fine. Like I'm not miserable or exhausted. I'm like, oh wow, okay, this is good. I like this.
Yeah. And obviously you share that you have a love for the genre, like horror genre. How did that start? Like what was it, a movie, a book, or what started your love for the genre?
So my parents had a really liberal sense about movies. Basically, they let us watch whatever we wanted. And so my big brother was like, yeah, we're going to watch all kinds of stuff. And he got us first into like the classic monsters. And my parents they were so blasé about it. They were like, oh, watch whatever you want, as long as it's fantasy and not real. So I like watched Freddy. I watched Friday the 13th series when I was like very young, like 5 or 6.
Okay.
So it really kind of shaped me. And then I was a big fan of the Wolfman. He was my favorite classic monster. So I got really into like werewolves. And behind me, I don't know if you can see it, there's a mask on the wall. That's my childhood Wolfman mask. Like I wore that costume till I grew out of it.
Oh my God.
So I've always been like the biggest horror geek. Like I won't even try to lie. Like I've liked it since I was little. And I remember being called a freak and a weirdo and all that stuff growing up, but I was so happy with horror. Like I loved our books that we grew up with, Goosebumps and all those wonderful stories and all that. Like I was so lucky. I don't know. I was fine being a horror geek. Like it really didn't bother me. I accepted who I was. And now that I'm older, I'm just more of that. I'm more myself than I ever been.
Yeah. Now it makes sense. Like the creep in the corner is like more of a Wolfman kind of like vibe
Yes.
to it, right? So.
Oh yeah, he absolutely does. And and of course I had to like make a werewolf little character, but I
Yeah.
mixed him with a hobgoblin. So
Yeah.
he's not like giant and scary. He's like a little dude that's
Yeah.
small and terrifying. But yeah, that's kind of led into Creep. Actually, what inspired Creep, aside from my students and trying to like, nurture those little spooky girls in my class who I knew, I saw that look and I was like, that was me. I was that kid too. Okay,
Yeah.
let me write a book for you. And so, and I hear lovely things too, like the kids who get attached to Creep and they buy them or they go to our book fairs or they see us at events.
Mhm.
I get notes from parents saying they slept with their Creep or they
Oh.
haven't put it down. It's their new baby. Like
Yeah.
that makes everything worth it.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And what do you think? Because I know one of the things, like, not necessarily all horror movies have to scare you, but that's one of the main things, So for you, what do you think people like being scared, or you yourself? Why do you feel like you like being scared?
I think it's a release.
Yeah.
Like they said, they've had studies that say that people who watch horror movies are more balanced, we're calmer, we have lower blood pressure because we find release, and instead of it being like a fear response, it's more of like almost like a pleasure response. Like you're enjoying that like heightened awareness and adrenaline pumping through you while you're watching that horror. It's so cathartic. Like that's probably what draws you in is all that good brain chemistry that's happening that just sucks you
in. True. And obviously, like, one thing we talk about, like, about horror movies is like they kind of, it's like a controlled environment, right, where you can face your fears. So for you, like, what does fear mean to you, and do you have a fear that you haven't overcome or you have overcome?
I would say probably the most thing that I would say, because there's logical fears, right? You're afraid you're gonna get hit by a car, or some kind of like everyday kind of fear.
Yeah.
But the stuff that I find really paralyzing is the loss of self and identity.
Okay.
That horrifies me. The concept of losing who you are and what makes you you. And how do you reconcile that? Like how do you live with that? Like that terrifies me. The uncertainty, the unknown, all of those things are really hard to deal with.
Yeah.
So I would say that those things, that's what freaks me out more than any jump scare, more than, Exorcist Reagan's head spinning around is like true to life horrors that really we have to confront, right? The things that we have to see that we don't want to look at. Like that's terrifying.
Yeah, that's crazy that you say that because I just interviewed Cinebeth, Beth Commando, and she said the same thing. She said that's what terrifies her. I was like, I never even thought about that. She said, oh, like Alzheimer's, like forgetting who you are.
But yes, yeah, that's so terrifying. That in itself, that kind of illness that robs you of you.
Yeah,
it makes sense.
Yeah, and for you, what's like your top 5 scary movies? I know it kind of changes for me and probably for you too, but what would you say like right now today would be your top 5?
Top 5. So number 1, of course, American Werewolf in London.
Oh, I love that one too.
My favorite movie. I binged it. Like it's all so good. Number 2 would be Near Dark.
Yeah,
I love Bill Paxton.
Yeah,
he was so good as Severin in that movie, and it's a horror western, and it's so well told. It's an excellent movie. Number 3 would probably be Lost Boys.
Okay.
Just because, Lost Boys. Like, I'm wearing a Lost Boys shirt.
Okay. Yeah, it's Santa Clarita.
Lost Boys is that. Poltergeist. Like, Poltergeist, because that's a comfort watch. Yeah. Like, I watched that movie so much during COVID lockdown, like, and unhealthy.
Oh my God.
Like, it was just on in the background. And then probably, the very last one, I'm going to go nostalgic. I'm going to say Monster Squad.
Okay.
Because that's it's so safer. The language is a little cringy. Some things did not age well.
Yeah.
But just the sentiment of it, I love that movie.
Yeah, Near Dark is a good one too. I feel like that one, like actually that one is like one for me. It's like a hidden gem for some people because I remember I was trying to find the DVD and it's like really rare, I guess. And I finally found it at one of the conventions. I was like so happy. I was like, yes. But
Oh yeah, I'm surprised they haven't re-released that, like Severin Films or one of the other like indie like horror video releases like that, and Fright Night Part 2 from the
yes,
80s.
that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, those are two that are like you can't find now.
Yeah, and what I like about Near Dark is like one of the first and probably only vampire movies that kind of found a cure to vampirism,
Yeah,
right? With the blood transfusion, which I would have never thought about that, but I'm like, oh, that's pretty smart.
it was really it was a clever way to like look at it as more like it's a disease of the blood, and
Yeah.
so it felt more real. Like it did feel like those people could exist.
Oh yeah.
Like you're wandering down, like your car breaks down, you're stuck on a like a lonely highway.
Yeah.
Like I would not be surprised to see like Lance Hendrickson show up all vamped out. Like it feels like it could happen. Not that it would, but you know, you get that sense of it. Like it was more grounded and kind of a eerily close reality.
Yeah, like the fact that most of them were like not nice people. It's like imagine if like mean people became vampires, or even like also like the aspect of like the little kid that he was pissed off that he was a little kid. Like, you know, I was like, nobody even thought about that, like being a little kid forever. Well, kind of like the interview with the vampire, right? So
exactly, that's like the nightmare, right? Is you're stuck as a child, but your brain grows.
Yeah.
That's another horror all in itself. But yeah, that was a real original one. I was really impressed with Near Dark. That was always one of my favorites as a kid. I always liked watching it.
Yeah, I just rewatched it too not that long ago, and I was like, yeah, it still holds up. Really good film.
It really does. Yeah.
And since you're a writer, right? One thing I like to ask, sometimes I kind of like stun the people with this one, but what if you could create your own like horror survival rule? What would it be?
Oh man, that's a tough one.
I know,
because you know everyone wants to make it. Yeah, everyone wants to make it as the final girl, and like, what do you do to survive a situation like that? Maybe never run up the stairs. That's probably like level 1.
Yeah.
If you're gonna survive at all, don't run up into your bedroom because the killer or the monster, it's already there or it's coming after you. Like,
yeah.
I never got that decision. So yeah, if I had like that's a horror rule, don't run up the freaking stairs.
Yeah. And how do you feel like the horror genre is doing today? I know a lot of people have like, you know, mixed feelings about it. Some people are really happy. Like for me, I'm glad it's still I think it's like the number 1 genre in my opinion, because a lot of like Netflix, all these different streaming services kind of are catering to horror now. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's an interesting time for horror because at this, like, we have the most representation of POC that at any point in horror. We have so many directors and so many talented writers, and they're telling their story from their perspective. And for one, I think it builds empathy because we can relate to someone we might not otherwise relate to. And I feel like that's really exciting. I think those kind of stories are the ones that are going to be like the new classics.
Yeah.
Because a wider audience can relate to them, and they're telling a story that's really like relatable.
Yeah.
And if you think about good horror, it survives the test of time. Night of the Living Dead. Mm-hmm. Romero said he wasn't intentionally like being political in there, but like a lot of that like fear and just like mob mentality, all of that stuff still is super relevant today.
Yeah, that's true.
So I think like the themes that are being explored now will be relevant in the future. I mean, unfortunately, I wish it wasn't that way.
Yeah.
But I think that kind of relevance. My biggest bone to pick with the genre is the whole elevated horror.
I know, yeah, same here.
Because like I don't know if you know, like it's those kind of stories and their proximity to like whiteness and that experience that's been told a million times.
Yeah,
it's kind of it's like exhausting. Like, haven't we seen this before?
Yeah.
And what, it's elevated because what, they want to look down their nose at our genre? Like, no, that's ridiculous. It's pretentious.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know where that like subgenre or whatever. I think it was like Scream maybe that brought it up. That's the first time I had ever heard that term, like where they're joking around. It's like, oh, I like elevated horror.
Oh yeah, that term really floats around like A24 movies, and I mean, I don't want to hate on A24 because I really respect what they're doing, and if it's bringing another generation into horror and it's speaking their language, then I guess I'm okay with what they're doing. It's not my particular taste, but then again, I like the 80s horror. That's my favorite. Yeah. I don't know if now I'm getting old, so
yeah, I think it's like It's like I pick different ones. Like for me, like I wouldn't say I'm a huge fan of A24, but I do like some like Hereditary. I know that's kind of another one where like people hate it or love it. I like it.
Yeah.
Midsummer, not so much for me. But but it's everybody has their own taste, which is cool. That's what I like about horror too, is like the subgenres now that we have.
Yeah.
So you can choose from whatever you like.
That's true. There's a little something for everyone. If you like ghosts and goblins, there's supernatural horror. If you like, bodies getting chopped up, there's grindhouse horror. There's, body horror. There's a little bit of something for everyone. And also there's like family friendly horror, which, I still love that kind of stuff. Like I still watch Hocus Pocus. I still, do all the little things I used to do as a kid around this time of year specifically. But I think there's a lot of like family friendly horror coming this way. It's exciting, the different levels and how it's reaching broader audiences from old and young.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. And for you, like obviously you say you're working like on a novel and everything like that. Like would you eventually like venture into like screenwriting or anything like that? Because like we're talking about representation and all that stuff. Would that be something that would be willing to do?
Oh, I'm absolutely open to writing. Or for screenplay, writing actually was a hobby. I did it just for fun for a while, just to like learn the practice of it and just kind of understand how you're telling stories in a different way. Like with comics, it's short media. You have a few pages to tell your story, and really what carries your story are the visuals.
Yeah.
And in a novel, you take it much slower. You're telling a story where you have to really build this world. Where film, it's visual again. So it kind of like it's much easier to tell the story visually. So I actually really leaned into screenwriting and really enjoyed it. I hope I get the opportunity to do it more. Initially, at one point, there was a discussion of turning Tales of Horrorgasm, our indie comic, into a TV series.
Oh wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so I have an entire like series Bible and a script for the pilot episode ready to go.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so there's producers out there.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to like reach out to you. I'm gonna have to reach out to you because I'm trying to get into like filmmaking, and that's one thing.
Ooh.
Like, so I tried my first stab at like doing a script for like also like a short film, but maybe I'll send it to you and you can look at it and see what you think, because it's.
Oh, absolutely! I would love to. I love that's one of the best part is collaborating with other writers and stuff and seeing like their ideas and how they tell a story. I love that. So absolutely, I would love to read it.
Yeah, and what I like about the Tales of Horrorgasm is like, because I was I've been thinking of doing this for like a long time too, and like I said, now that I'm moving into filmmaking, I'm kind of trying to like figure out how I'm gonna do everything. But it kind of I don't know if yours came from Tales from the Crypt, but like for me, that's where the inspiration for this like short like series, I guess you can call it. It's called like Las Leyendas de mi Abuelita, or like the legends of my grandma.
I love that.
And it would be cool because the way I envision it's kind of like Tales from the Crypt, where it's like every episode is like a lesson. Because my grandma, same thing, kind of like your mom, like she would tell us stories too, like different legends, like a Mexican folklore. And so I've always wanted to like bring that to life, because now she passed away, but we never got to like write them down. But I still remember some of them, So it would be cool to like do it in that format.
That sounds like stories that need to be told. That's awesome, because it's true. The folklore, our legends are really, really dark. Like they're terrifying. And actually, when I was little, we went to a relative's wedding in Mexico, one of my mom's cousins, and my male cousins, the boys, were teasing me, telling me that La Llorona was going to get me if I went outside.
Yeah.
I remember being really scared, but later after the wedding, we got home and I asked my abuelita, I said, well, La Llorona can't get me, right? Because I'm here in San Diego. I'm far away. She's not going to get me. And she laughs and says, Mija, we bring our ghost with us.
Oh. That's a good one.
Trauma. Just totally traumatized me. But it's true, because we carry them with us. We carry those stories, and they're a little different depending on where you are. Like La Llorona, the story, it's different in central Mexico. The further south you go, the more the story changes. And now up here in the north, it's also changed. And it's interesting because other people are telling our stories.
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, and like that's heartbreaking. Like the film La Llorona, like,
Yeah.
I have issues.
Yeah.
I have issues with it. And yeah, so I remember like seeing the white savior show up, and I was instantly pissed off.
Yeah.
We need to tell our own stories, because the ones who rescue us isn't the white savior. We rescue ourselves. Yeah. We're the survivors. The fact that we're working and still enjoying our culture, that just proves that we're survivors, and we need the platform for it. And I think a lot of Latina creators are trying to push through that wall as well.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree with that. It was like gonna be my next point, is like I want to see more. Like we have that now. Like Gigi Saul Guerrero is like one of my favorite like up and coming like Mexican film directors.
Oh yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
Yes.
So like it's cool to see that, like more of that. Like I've seen a lot like this year alone, like independent horror films. Like I think there was another one called Mal de Ojo. And it's like
I saw that. Yes,
and it's like I think he's Mexican too, Mexican director. But it's just cool to see
Mexican director, Mexican writer, Mexican cast.
Yeah, so I'm like, it's cool to see that happening, like you said, being done by our people, because it's been told, like you said, by like the people that are not supposed to be writing these things, and it's just gone bad. But I mean, even I think they just did a new Llorona too, but it was just really bad. I think it was like Danny Trejo was in it.
Yes, okay, I saw that one.
I haven't seen it yet. I just saw the cover for it.
I think it's up on Tubi right now.
Okay, I'll have to watch it. I mean, not to be mean, I love Danny Trejo, but he doesn't do like he's not an A-list, horror movie.
He's amazing. He's a really good guy. Like I love him. I adore Danny Trejo. But yeah, no, I get it. He's got to pay the bills, right?
Yeah,
got to pay the bills. Yeah. But our stories being told by us, that's how it should be.
Yeah.
Especially now, cultural, there's like a huge shift, especially among young creators. These Gen Z kids don't put up with nothing. Yeah. And they're very vocal about representation and what it means to be a part of a culture and to tell that story, and how they're pushing back against like internalized colonialism and all of that stuff that we carry with us and we're trying to work through. Yeah. And it's amazing seeing how people who have worked through it are telling amazing stories.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm excited to see what's coming up, because I've been seeing like a lot of announcements. I think I don't know if you saw the announcement today, where they're redoing, I think some Marca la Hora de Terror or something like that. I forgot what it was, but it's what made like Guillermo del Toro and all those people like blow up. And Gigi is like part of it, the guy that directed Mal de Ojo. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that sounds exciting. Like I'm that target audience for that for sure. So,
yeah, so I'm excited.
Exciting.
Yeah,
it's a good time. It's a good time to be a Latina creator, a Chicana creator, to see how like, okay, these people open these doors. Now we gotta rush in. Let's make sure we're telling stories that are captivating. We're creating art that reflects not only our culture but our resilience and our strength.
Yeah, and I agree. Yeah, and I think even recently too, like even seeing people in those roles too, like the main characters, because growing up I didn't really see like a lot of brown people. Even in Mexico, Mexican television, they talk about colorism, right? Where it's like a lot of like light skinned, or some of them not even Mexican, which a lot of people don't know this, but like a lot of the actors in like soap operas or telenovelas are mostly like from like they're Russian, Argentinian, like they're not even Mexican. So that's another thing too. That's like racism in our own TV. But it's cool to see, more brown people.
Yes,
like Wakanda, with Wakanda having the.
I know. Tenoch Huerta. Yeah, oh my goodness.
Yes.
He was terrifying in Tigers Are Not Afraid. He's amazing. Yes. I wish we weren't the villain.
I know.
It's like, man, okay, we're in it, but why are we the villain? Like, come on. But hopefully, they change their minds and go after colonizers. Yeah. Let's join forces and go after them.
That's what I'm thinking. We'll see.
Yeah. But yeah, colorism's a big issue. And I mean, I'm talking about it as a light-skinned Latina. Like, I very much understand the privilege that comes with looking like this. My siblings, I think you've met my big brother, but like he's big and brown, and my little sister is brown and beautiful. I'm the only one who came out like a ghost. I'm not sure what happened, but I see them, and my nephew, like they deserve to be seen on television and have people look like them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can't imagine how, like, it's so disenfranchising to see, like, oh, okay, there's a white dude playing a Mexican or you know, a Cuban, or you know, that you see these white people put in place, and then they're doing brown face, and it's like, that wasn't that long ago. Like, that's still a thing. Like, I think James Franco is playing Castro.
Yes, I was gonna say that. Yeah, that was like the biggest outrage like most recently. I was like, really? We have so many Latino actors, and it's like you chose him? Like, really?
I know, right? Like, Pedro Pascal, I'm sure, would be available. What are we doing?
And didn't James Franco just get canceled too, like with this whole thing going on with the Me Too movement? And then all of a sudden he does this. I'm like, who's his publicist? Because I'm like,
right? Like, how is this dude still getting work? He like harassed women horribly, and he can still get a job. I mean, I'm not saying like Castro was a good dude, because no, but like, can't we get a Cubano to play the role? Someone appropriate, someone who hasn't been canceled, who's not like a scumbag. That would be great. Seriously. Like, and it's so weird that that's like an argument now, that we actually, like, that's a discussion we have to have.
Yeah, I agree.
It's 2022 and we're still punching at that brick wall trying to get through.
Yeah, I agree. And for you, like, what's one piece of advice you would give to someone that's trying to get into the, you know, the art community?
Just dive in. Go to some art shows, go to book clubs. If you're a writer and you want to meet other writers, go to book clubs. Just kind of, you don't have to put yourself out there immediately. Go a couple times, see who's like a regular there. People will chat with you. Like, they'll come up to you and talk. If you go to an art show and you're nervous, because I that was me. Yeah. I was scared. So I would tell them, just start going to the things, start joining book clubs, go to art walks, go to art shows. That's the way you get in, is to meet people. It's a very kind community. Most people are really giving. They don't, if you're a first time artist and you like horror and want to do a show, email me, send me your work. I'll keep you in mind and I'll have you in a show in the future. If you're a writer and you want to write a horror comic story and you have one ready to go, email me. We'll add you to our list of other writers and artists. That we want to be really inclusive with the community. So just remember, it's a good place with good people, and it's okay to be nervous.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, that's really great advice. Because that's the only way, I think, like, that's how I got into like the whole hip hop and the horror community here. It's like, just kind of, like you said, dive in and get to know people, because that's the main way you build like relationships with people, you know?
Yeah. The community is good. The horror community here is good.
Yeah.
San Diego's a good spot for all of this.
Yeah. And for you, who influences your art? Is there somebody's like specific, like another artist, or where do you get your inspiration from?
Mostly pop culture, like films.
Okay.
So if I see a movie and it like hits me, I'm like, oh, okay, I got to make a sculpture of something of that character. So it's usually external. It's usually from movies or television. What inspires me is the art around me, what's kind of in my environment, what I'm absorbing, what I'm seeing. But the thing that will always motivate me is my mom.
Oh, that's good.
You know, she was amazing, and she was very creative, and she wanted to be a writer.
Yeah. And
she wrote stories for me.
Yeah.
And whenever I'm feeling like, what am I doing? Am I making a terrible life decision?
Yeah.
I'll read what she wrote to me in her journal, because she knew I'd, have it one day.
Yeah.
And her message to me to just keep trying and keep going. Yeah. And so I think about the stories she told me, our folklore, our like horror stories.
Yeah.
And I carry those in my heart. I carry that. So really it's San Diego. That's my well. This is where I draw all my creativity from. It feeds me, it nourishes me, and I feel like I will forever love San Diego. This place will always be my home.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, it's like a way to keep her legacy alive too, like telling.
Absolutely. Yeah, because I see her in everything. I don't know how she'd feel about all the horror stuff, right? Probably she would be uncomfortable with some of those themes.
Yeah.
But really, like, I wish she was still here, so there were some things I could show her, like more cultural pride, more Chicanismo, more, because that's what we are now. Everyone's so bold, and my mom was really reserved. Yeah, I would have loved to have pulled that, like, let her see, like, our culture should be celebrated. You don't have to hide. You know, you don't have to just speak English in public. You don't, you know, you can embrace your culture and be at it freely without worry.
Exactly.
And that was such a powerful way to live and think. And I try to carry that with me. And moving forward creatively, I think it will always drive me. I will always write her strength as my characters. Every heroine will be my mom.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And who would you say is your favorite horror writer, and do you have any favorite book?
Oh my gosh, Neil Gaiman. The Ocean at the End of the Lane. Oh my God, that book is beautiful. It tells the story of the maiden mother crone in such a really like fascinating and beautiful way. And we have our version of that in our own culture. And I saw how those two connected, and it was just really beautiful. That's one of my favorite books. If I want to have nightmares, I'll read Paul Tremblay or Gabino Iglesias.
Okay.
Those two guys, they will horrify you.
Yeah. What's a book by Gabino Iglesias? It sounds familiar.
So he did there's The Devil Takes You, and then he did Santa Muerte.
Okay.
There's a few other titles he's got out that I haven't. Coyote-san, I think, is another one of his.
Okay.
But yeah, he writes in Spanish, like there's Spanish in his book, like whole paragraphs, and it's really amazing to read through that.
Yeah.
And that it's okay to have that in books.
Yeah.
People, you can, like, it's okay to have Spanish and English in a book, and even Spanglish. Like, I use Spanglish in my book. Yeah. Cool. I love that. Stina Playo is also an amazing poet and writer, and she's from Chicago. And so she has a different cultural perspective that I find really refreshing. And a lot of her noirs are amazing. There's a lot of really good indie horror out there.
Yeah, there is. I've been finding that out because I was trying to get somebody like an author on here, and I just went down the rabbit hole, and I was like, oh my God, there's so many like independent authors out here, even Latinos too. I was like, oh, that's cool.
Oh, there's a lot of us. It's amazing. Yeah. There's Mexican Gothic was another really good novel by Silvia Moreno Garcia. That was scary. That book, the atmosphere she created, and she told a Gothic horror story set in Mexico. It's brilliant.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And what's is there any recent film, like new film that you've watched that you recommend or that you liked?
I enjoyed The Black Phone.
Yes, that was a good one.
Ethan Hawke is frightening. He's so intense, and he had half his face covered.
Yeah.
For the whole movie, you couldn't see the top or the bottom at different points. And so we're only seeing half his face, but he's still being absolutely horrifying. That's talent right there.
Yeah, I love the whole cast was well picked out. The little girl for me stole the show. She was just freaking hilarious.
Oh my God, she was great. Yeah. Oh, so yeah, I wish I had her spunk.
Yeah, she defended her brother too. She didn't give a fuck. I was like, wow.
Oh yeah, she was a little badass. She was great.
Yeah, she kind of reminded me a little bit of my little sister too, because she's one of those two where she just fights everybody's battles, but also the fact that she had the dreams. My little sister has that too, where she has dreams and sometimes they come true. So it's kind of cool to have that aspect added to the story. I was like, oh, that's really cool.
I like that. Yeah, it was an interesting way to tell that kind of story, and that kind of that's another ghost story where it's the ghosts aren't necessarily the bad guys.
Yeah, exactly. And I like the fact that they kind of tied it in with they did a good job of building the character of her, and also her mom, how the mom, she had something psychological with the dad thought if she was going crazy, but maybe she just had a gift, and maybe she kind of lost sense of reality maybe, but the fact that she didn't want the daughter to have the same thing happen to her was pretty heartbreaking.
I think it is. That's another thing I think we carry with us is and in my book it does deal with that the stigma of mental illness and what that means, and especially in our culture, you're not supposed to get help. You're not supposed to be depressed. We have so much. We're supposed to be lucky, especially if we live here. And our parents worked so hard to give us the life that we have now. It's one of those things that a lot of people just suffer inside. And that sensitivity to those things too, I think adds to that. And you play with the idea of what is reality, what is happening to me, what I'm experiencing. And a lot of that goes into domestic violence. My book deals with that a lot.
Yeah.
Because my mom was a domestic violence survivor in her previous marriage, and I wanted to avenge her.
Yeah.
You know, I wanted to fight her battle. I wanted to save her, you know. And unfortunately she passed, and so she was, I never got to, she just didn't get the opportunity to.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that kind of stuff is real heavy.
Yeah.
But the beautiful thing about horror is we're allowed to like search that. We're allowed to dive into those topics and things that would otherwise be taboo or would be looked down on. We can really take the gloves off as horror creators and like look at these things in society that we have to deal with: domestic violence, abuse, and dealing with kind of loss of identity and stuff. There's so much of those things that we can address in fiction, especially horror fiction.
Yeah. Even like recently, I mean, it wasn't a horror, it was like more, it was a true crime one. I don't know if you've seen it. I forget what the name of it is called, but it was just kind of like, I never really thought about it, but like how a lot of like Latinos or just people of color in general, back in the day, you would get, you would be thrown in jail for a crime that you didn't commit is just because you tend to look like this person or whatever. Like I forgot what the name of this documentary. It was really good, but this guy looked exactly like this other Mexican guy, and he, I think where it was, I think it might have been in Texas somewhere where they had the death penalty, and they pretty much found him guilty. He kept saying that it was another guy with the same exact name but different last name, and nobody was like, no, we can't find him, whatever. And then like somebody did some digging after like he ended up getting killed like through the death penalty and stuff like that, and they found out that this guy did exist. He was known for like being violent to women, and he ended up dying in prison as well, but for a different crime. But he never got tried for like killing this other woman. And I was like, wow, that's so crazy. And like the fact that like all these injustices happen, where like,
oh yeah,
you're like for the wrong crime.
It is. And a lot of people are so desensitized to like that true life kind of crime.
Yeah.
Like we find it fascinating. Like the Jeffrey Dahmer show.
Yes.
He went after POC.
Yeah.
Like the victims were brown people. And I feel like we can address content like that and look at those kind of things. And I'm glad that at least they touched on a little bit of what was happening socially and how the system failed POC and how it allowed for someone like that to terrorize a community for as long as he did.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I don't think much has changed since the 80s.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Like, I mean, it's weird because I mean, we've all been home for years, and we were, a couple of years now, we've been having to see all this terrifying stuff on the news. And I think that's a lot of real life horror. That's a lot of real life horror. And it's something that I think a lot of us are starting to examine, and we're examining it in our work. I know I addressed racism in my book, and man, did I get some really angry rejections from publishers saying no one wants to read about a brown person killing racist. No one wants to read about, a bunch of angry white people dying, which I did. I wrote a little bit of revenge in there for us. I couldn't help myself. I was angry. And I feel like we're not allowed to even show that anger because we get dismissed.
That's true.
So instead we can channel this stuff, take that darkness and create something with it.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, like with the whole Jeffrey Dahmer, like I didn't even really think of that way because maybe I was so young when I heard about it, and I actually wrote a paper on him, but I never saw the racial part of it until I watched the movie or the show, and I was like, oh wow. I didn't even think about that. I was like, all the victims, they were brown. He was in a community where it was just like people that the cops didn't care about him, and then so many like 3 or 4 times he got away because of his white privilege, pretty much. So I was like,
oh yeah,
the body,
all of them do. All the big name serial killers.
Yeah,
all of these guys got close to being caught, but you were able to use their privilege to get out of it.
Yeah,
because women aren't listened to, or minorities aren't listened to. We're silenced, and there's a lot of power given to those men that they exploited.
Yeah,
in a real horrifying way.
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy. And for you, how do you define success as an artist?
Whew, that's a tough one, right? Because
Yeah.
I think we're dealing with a lot of like expectations of what our lives should be like. Oh, I should be a homeowner at this age and I should be able to fully support myself with my work. Like, no, you make art, you show it, you don't show it, but you create it. You're still an artist. That's still successful. You took
Yeah.
something that was nothing, raw materials, and you harnessed it into something you created. And so I think that's the best part of this process is just that creation and focusing on that success. Um, I think if you create something and it touches someone's heart, they relate to your story, they like your picture book character. You create something that connects with someone, that's success to me. Monetary success, having side gigs, that's kind of the life of a millennial, right? We have day jobs and then we have our side gigs. And I was fortunate enough that now, yes, I can call myself a writer full time, but I'm not sure how long I'll be able to do that. Financially, it's tough here, it's expensive.
Yeah.
So as long as it's sustainable, I'll keep doing it. But as far as success, I don't know, monetary success is hard to say if that's actually a factor nowadays.
Yeah.
Really, it's just creating something out of nothing, starting something and finishing it. Because I've known plenty of really talented people who start things and then they can't finish it. Never.
That's true.
And so, and that can get you really down. And that's okay if that happens. I have projects that are going to probably never get finished. But the fact that I do make stuff, I still put it out there, that's success.
Yeah, and I like that you say that because I talk about that with my little sister too, about like just putting it out there and like you said, creating something out of nothing. Like that means a lot. Like even for me, like because I do music too, and like creating like an actual song. Like sometimes I doubt myself, like we were talking about earlier, but then I think about like who can create like a song. Not everybody can do that, or not everybody can go and paint. So something so simple like that is success, like you said. I like that you put it that way. Pretty cool. And one thing before we get out of here, what do you want your art to be remembered for?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Man, to quantify everything, I want to leave people with the feeling of nostalgia, that they can read one of my books or they can buy one of my art pieces and it connects with something inside them. And like, that's what I want. I want to be remembered for making a difference in the community.
Yeah.
And for giving voice to other creators and support to other creators. It's just that I tried, that I went for it.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, and you're doing that. Like I said, you're like really inspirational. I don't really like normally the people that I pick. Like I said, I kind of curate the people that I have on my podcast, and it usually is people like you yourself that I admire and inspiring to me because I'm like I want to be where you guys are at. Like I'm going there, walking my way there.
Oh yeah, and you're there. You're already there, honey. Like
thank you.
with having this podcast, I'm a fan of. I'm a fan. Like
thank you.
I mean, your podcast is really cool, and you give a really unique insight into horror. Like I didn't know about horror rap. Like I listened to horror punk.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, oh, this is like good stuff. Like you've introduced me to like new ways of enjoying horror. And so you're already doing it. You're already there.
Thank you. And one last thing too, because obviously follow your social media, Creep in the Corner. You also have After Dark Creations, right? And then Horrorgasm.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to share before we get out of here? Like any upcoming shows, anything like that?
Oh, yes. Okay. So my story that deals with the subversion of the legend of La Llorona, that's going to be available at Amazon and Barnes & Noble, Kindle, and paperback. And it's coming out October 22nd. So you can actually pre-order it now.
Oh, okay.
And
cool.
then The Creep in the Corner is going to be at DesignerCon in Anaheim on November 18th through the 20th. I'm going to be booth TD11. So come say hi to me. And my brother Kat is going to be there with his like horror kind of company. I used to have that. He sells like vintage monster collectibles. He has all kinds of stuff, but he's a horror fanatic like I am. So his horror VHS that he sells, oh my gosh, I really have to stop myself from trying to steal it from him.
Yeah, that's really cool.
But yeah, so we'll be at Designer Con. So come say hi to us. Adopt a creep in the corner. We'll be there. But yeah, and then if we have our trade paperback for Tales of Horrorgasm, our comic is at horrorgasmsd.com. And yeah, check out my business partner as well, Atibak. He's an awesome artist and is the best partner I could ask for. So yeah, check us out.
Perfect. Thank you so much again for meeting with me, and I appreciate you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This has been so fun.
Likewise. All right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in for another episode of Nightmare on Sedgwick Avenue. Go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't done so already, or you can also stream this on all streaming platforms. Thank you.